held her hand as I walked through. She loves me enough to do that. All right.
Well, it took me 5 minutes to find those ladies down there. They disappeared.
So obviously this is the dining room. I don't usually tell my story from inside the house, so I have to regroup. So the day that I met the ghost hunters, we went through the carriage house first. And they looked around. Obviously, it's a very small space, so it didn't take them long to figure out where to set up their equipment. It'll make more sense to you guys to process. As we came in the house, you saw me disarm the alarm. It's touch sensitive. You have to put your fingerprints in and disarm. So we went through that process. There is a bell system in this house. If one of you all wants to pull out that chair right here and feel around with your toe, you'll find a raised area underneath it. You sit in that chair. That would have been Mrs. Glenn's chair.
A raised area?
Yes, and that would have been
it'll
where.
It'll shock you quite a bit.
No, it won't. It will not. That would be where the lady of the house would have sat. And if you feel around with your left foot, think. No, it is her right foot. Sorry, you're right. Do you feel a bump in the floor?
Always right.
We're always right. I got to feel it. That's a bump. That's a bell system. It's in the kitchen. When we go out, you can see it on the wall. There's a system of hidden bells all through the house where they can ring for the servants. Because in Victorian times, you would have been like, "Hey, bring me some stuff." You would have rang the bell. The bell system is the source of a lot of the ghost stories for this house. The bell system sort of has a mind of its own. You guys can sit there and you can take some more. So the bell system will just sort of randomly go off sometimes, and it's a little bit frightening when it happens. But all of the wiring that you see in this house, anybody who is a buildy type person who's looking around outside, everything in this house is original. The knob and tube wiring in this house is what was put in 1900. That's what's powering every light bulb in here. These radiators on the wall, these are the original radiators. They still work. That's what heats the house in the winter. Everything is original. So understand that the historian in me knows that when the bells go off, it probably is not ghostly. It is probably wiring. It doesn't make it any less unsettling when you're in here and they start to sort of have a mind of their own. When the bells are rang, there's a box in the kitchen, and it triggers. Each of the rooms are labeled, and there's an arrow that comes up. So the servant that was in the kitchen would have known what room the bells were being rang from. And because the bells are an integral part of the ghost stories in the house, the ghost hunters were very interested in this bell system. So as we walked into the kitchen, the first thing that they noticed was that one of the arrows was showing that the bell had been rung that day from the children's room. It's not that uncommon for docents to ring them while they're giving tours, so didn't really think anything about it because I just assumed it had been rung during the day. But the first thing they wanted to do, of course, was reset the bell system because they wanted clean data. Because ghost hunters, people think a lot of times are very flighty, but many of them are very data driven. So it's a scientific research process and they need to make sure that the data is clean. So we do that, we reset the bell system, we come in, and the very first thing that I notice, you're in the back, so you get to do it. Pull those pocket doors shut. Was that hard to do?
Yeah, it doesn't close all the way.
But did it roll real easy? Yeah. Okay. So when I came in, pocket doors were shut like that. This door was also like this. Okay? Did y'all hear that noise in here? The air conditioner running? There's also dehumidifiers running in here because you smell. There's a little bit of a moisture issue, right? Some of the docents who have been here since 1974, the old rule was at night they close the house up completely like this. And there's a few of them that are still docents here. So if they docent, they close the doors like this every day. They're the people who give tours, tour guides. And so when I came in and I saw the door shut like this, my first thought was one of the older tour guides had given the tour that day. But we are supposed to now leave all the doors open because of those dehumidifiers running. It's important for ventilation. I promise you I have a point, okay? So my first thing I did, of course, was open up the doors. And I told the ghost hunters, y'all can do, if can't stand on the table, you can't sit on the cane back chairs, but within reason, you can mess with most stuff. Showed them where the plugins were, but I said try to leave the doors open because we really need at night for the house to, the moisture to get pulled out because of the wallpaper and things. So we walked through room by room after the doors were open, and they did sort of the same process. Found out where the plugins were, figured out where they were going to set up their equipment. We were in the house about an hour. They came in at about 6. We left at about 7. They had enough time to run and grab some fast food. I had enough time to go run and grab a Grody soda. If you're from Cape, you'll know the fast food drive-in soda is king. So I went through, got a road soda, came back. I'm just telling you that for context because we weren't gone very long. Came back and we repeated the process, right? They set up all of their equipment first in the carriage house. We came back in, we went through the kitchen. The first thing they noticed is in that time that we were gone, the bells had been triggered. So still no big deal, right? Because it could have happened that they just fritzed, right? So we reset the bell system so they would have clean data. We walked through the butler's pantry. It was dark. This was before I was afraid of the house, so I didn't act like the wuss that some of you guys saw me act like when I came in. I walked through to turn on the light. When I kicked the light on, the first thing I noticed, all these doors were shut again. Now, in my mind, I thought, it's an old house. Maybe a train came by. You think a train would cause this to shut? You guys shut them. But that's what I thought. And then I realized that door was shut too. I thought, well, whoever was the docent today must have come back. Maybe she forgot something and just closed all the stuff back up. Because some of those older docents, they don't really like it when the house is open. So I could see it. She forgot her jacket. She came back there and angrily closed all the doors. That's where I went in my head. That's what happened for sure. So we walked through. We set up here.
Okay, what's that?
Somebody's phone.
Oh, okay.
I'm not trying to come on. You make me go by myself. Leave it alone. See you at the bottom. You okay? Oh, well that. I think I just said that completely scared.
There? Do you want to go up there?
And they figured out that there were 3 places like that. So Glenn's not only has a 60-second telephone in Southeast Missouri, he has 3. And that tells you their status level. They were quite high up in status. The art on the wall in the house is currently in mourning, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the art is funerary art. It was common for Victorians to use funeral art as art. Flowers were hard to come by, so funeral wreaths were made out of feathers. They were made out of human hair. There's some of those in the house, out of a variety of things if flowers were not available. This one, of course, has got feathers and things in it, but that would be a traditional Victorian funeral wreath. When you see a wreath hung like that, the house is in mourning. If it's not in mourning, they're hanging like a horseshoe, facing up to catch luck. During mourning time, they face down. So, also, just a side note, in that parlor we were just in, the wallpaper pattern is Lincoln wallpaper. We think the Kardashians are like the first in terms of, fashions we follow, right? Abraham Lincoln, what happened to that dude? He was shot. Where did it happen?
Theater.
Theater, right? And he was in his own theater booth. And pictures of that booth were taken, and they were in all of the newspapers. And in that picture, you could clearly see the wallpaper pattern. And just like today, when people saw things in the news, they emulated them. So they emulated that wallpaper pattern by buying it, and it became the most popular post-Civil War wallpaper pattern, known simply as the Lincoln pattern, because it was the booth that Lincoln died in. And so they lived with death a little differently. So my ghost hunters, we come in here. This door was shut again. Rinse and repeat all the way through the house. All of the doors were pushed shut. And so we went through. Tom will take you upstairs. I will not go with you. Thank you. But my least favorite room is the room above us, and it's the children's room. The children's room, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just staged as a children's room, which means it has a lot of little dolls and things. It's a little off-putting during the day. It's extremely off-putting at night. It is my least favorite room in the house to go in at night, and always has been, even before I had some issues. My ghost group, I took them to the children's room last, just because of that. No real reason other than it's my least favorite room to go in. You notice when I showed you the other doors that I had the door shut, but it wasn't latched? As we walked through the house and they set up their equipment, the only door in this house that was closed and latched was the door in the children's room. I was doing a ghost tour that night also, and so I had to set them up, leave one of my staff with them, and go out. And my costume during that time had tulle on it like this, but it was white. It had a lot of it, and it was real floaty. And when I opened the door, I actually had to push on it. That's not uncommon, and I wanted you guys to open that other door because there's a little door swell here, right? I didn't think anything about having to push on that door. When the door opened, I didn't think anything about the fact that there was enough air that it blew the hood of my costume back. Because that's not uncommon. It was a day, really like today, where it had just turned cool, and I thought maybe the docents had the windows open to air the house out, and maybe had forgotten to shut a window. So when I pushed on the door, walked in, hood blew back, and my thought when I walked in with a purpose, was I was looking at the windows, okay? I immediately thought I needed to close one of them. When you get into that room upstairs that Tom will take you to, you'll see that on the wall is our bells. It's not ring-a-ling-ling bells, but there's buttons. These are the old-fashioned light switches. These are original light switches. But beside them is a little button. And that button in the children's room is what they would have pushed for the nanny, okay? And it would have showed up on the bell indicator. I got about to where you're standing inside the room above you, and the bells started to go off. Now, normally when you ring the bells, I wish you can't ring the front bell from here. Normally when you ring the bells, even if you push them, they'll go ring. Think about like a very old school bell. They go ring, but they don't, even if you hold the button in, they don't continue to ring, okay? That's important because it's just a ring, and every time you push it, ring, 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 right? Except the bell system forgot how it was supposed to work that night. And when I walked through, it started to ring, and it just stayed on a steady ring, okay? Kind of stuck on. My initial thought was something's like downstairs, the chair is sitting on the bell, or the bell is like pressed in one of the rooms. And so while the ghost hunters went into the room, I started looking for what was triggering the bell. And the very first thing I did was come down and make sure the chair wasn't sitting on the bell down here, which is why I showed that to you guys. That has happened, but it usually just goes ring, ring, ring. Makes sense? And this was that very solid, shrill noise. That wasn't the case. So I looked in all the other places where there's bells, and I went back upstairs and I was tapping around on the wall, thinking maybe it was like stuck. I came back downstairs. In the kitchen, when I looked at the bell indicator, the first time I felt a cold chill go up my back was when I realized that it was coming from the children's room, according to the indicator, okay? I still really didn't think that much about it, old house, etc., etc., until I flipped the breaker. The breaker is on the side of the bell system. So effectively, that should have turned the electricity off, except the bell system didn't seem to comprehend that, and it kept ringing. I went back upstairs. I walked all through the house again. Tom lives not far from here, and so he came walking up the alleyway because he was going to come for that ghost tour that night. And at the point he walked up the alleyway, I was walking out the back door of the house. Bells had probably been ringing somewhere around 5-6 minutes at that point, solidly. I was getting a little bit concerned, and the president of the Historical Association, his wife was here with me that night, but she doesn't come in the house at night. So she was out in the carriage house making coffee. And so when I walked through the back door back there, all I remember is being very focused on who the docent was that day. Because all of this stuff had started to come together in my mind in a picture that I didn't really like, right? And I was really then concerned about, was it one of the older docents? Like, how did the doors get shut, right? Because that was really important all of a sudden. And so I went out and I said, who is the docent today? And she's told me this story, like, from the other side. She said I was really pale. And she didn't hesitate. And so she picked up the phone and she called. And that lady's very hard of hearing. And I heard her from the other end of the cell phone. She said, did you come back? And she said, no, I didn't come back. And what's going on with those bells? And you know that whole, you've heard your heart sinks or whatever? That literally happened to me. I felt like my stomach go ka-conk because I thought, I don't really know what's happening here. So the president of the board is an engineer. He was a former executive for AutoZone. I give you the context because they aren't fanciful folk. She calls him and she says, the bell system seems to have gone crazy and we don't know what to do. Christy's flipped the breaker, it won't stop. And he says the primary wiring for the house, for the bell system and that part of the house, is in the butler's pantry, you know, under that sink thing. Just get her to get something that's got a rubber handle, like some pliers, so, you know, and snip that wire. So he tells me all of this, and I'm thinking, this is how I die. Like, on my epitaph, it goes, killed by house, giving ghost tour, right? And so I'm thinking, this really wasn't how I envisioned that it all comes down, because I know what happens when I try to snip that wire. I'm going to die. It's going to electrocute me, and, you know, I've gone through all this in my head. So I decided I'm going to make one last ditch effort. And at this point, the bells probably had been going off for 15 solid minutes, right? So I go back upstairs, and like any good white girl, all I needed was like some pumpkin spice and something else. I was so like, I'm just going to tap around on the wall and that'll fix everything. And I tried all that and it didn't work. And I just had visions of, I've got to go downstairs and do electrical work and I'm going to die. And so, and oh, by the way, in the meantime, my ghost hunters have decided that this is ghostly and they're in heaven. So there are like 8 people spread out throughout the house taking like EVPs and temperature readings and, you know, and I go back up and I'm pretty sure I said some cuss words because no one was recording me. And so I said, blankety blip blop. You know what? They're not going to hurt anything. Just knock it off. And I had no sooner said knock it off than everything in this house, and I do mean every creak, every snap, every pop that this house makes went dead silent, including the bells. Did not make a peep after that. Now I have to tell you that I only know that sort of because the next thing I truly remember after that happening was I was sitting on the bench outside by the fountain calling my husband and he's like, are you crying? And at that point I realized, guys, I was sobbing because I had gotten the snot scared out of me. And I promise you, there was nothing negative. It was just such an eerie, immediate stop, and I can't explain it. 3 weeks later, my ghost hunters that were here sent me the EVPs from that day. There are doors slamming, voices, piano, things that none of us heard in real life on that tape. And if that tape was not doctored, I have no idea where those sounds came from. Because it's pretty quiet in here, except for the normal pops and creaks in the normal house. So that was my first experience with the house, sort of freaking me out a bit.
children would have been in this room? How many?
They had the boys and the girls separated. And I think, don't quote me, but I think there was 3 girls, 3 boys.
So 3 girls would have been sleeping in this bed.
I don't know. They probably would have had another, I'm sure they had another bed.
Oh.
Now, there used to be another bed
House?
years ago. This is different from last year.
2 girls, 3 boys.
No, what did you say? We're supposed to have a house.
When you flip Renee's, I think this will meet your approval. Is this the bell?
Yes, don't press it, she said. Did you press it?
No.
It's pretty.
See anything good in there? Get your phone out. Turn on the flashlight.
What's the decorations are right now? So basically, the parents had this room, the boys in that room, the girls in that room, and the nanny, however they had a nanny and a butler, at least, well, let me get the line. Let me tell them like this room.
So-
They converted this room to what they call the river room.
That's a river.
Ah.
We don't walk in.